Thanks, Mary. Welcome, Allison and Dana. It's great to see you.
Morning. Thank you for having us.
Morning.
I will turn things right over to you. I know we're expecting a crowd today, so I'll keep letting people in from the waiting room. But our first question for all 9:30 callers is for each of you to tell us a little bit about you, and then we're really excited to hear the update.
Awesome. So happy to kick it off. My name is Dana Sullivan. I am the Chief of Strategy and Operations at the Executive Office for Administration and Finance, and I am leading the project management team for the Early Education and Childcare Task Force this year. Also, I think relevant for this group, mom of three young kids. So very familiar with the childcare system as it's something I interact with every single day and very passionate about getting the whole of government to work together to think about it. So I will turn it over to my colleague Allison to introduce herself, and then we have a few slides we want to go through to give an update on what we've been doing.
Great.
Great. Thanks, Dana. Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Pinto. I am one of the lead project managers for the Interagency Early Education and Childcare Task Force, along with Dana. I've been at EOE for about, 4 months now, working on this project, and very excited to tell you about what we've been up to and just share a little bit more about the task force. So let me share screen with some slides.
And if folks have questions, you can add them to chat and I'll facilitate the questions. So Dana and Allison, you don't need to worry about that. And then we will send you the chat after the end of the call.
Great. Thank you. Perfect. So to start out, we just wanted to give a little bit of background around the task force. I know many of you have heard of us or it, but helpful to just ground everyone in who we are, what we're doing. So last January, Governor Healy signed an executive order that established the Interagency Early Education and Childcare Task Force with the goal of ensuring Massachusetts leads the nation in early education and childcare across the dimensions of access, affordability, equity, and quality. The task force is really taking a whole of government approach. So we brought together the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development, and the Secretary of Economic Development, along with members from agencies across government to really drive the progress of the task force forward. And we have been and will continue to engage with stakeholders across Massachusetts. We've talked to industry leaders, health services, housing and planning experts, and then, of course, the parents and caregivers and childcare providers and experts. So we're really trying to hear the voices all across Mass. And I'll get into a little bit more of what we've been up to and what we've done in year one and year two shortly. But wanted to say that we have been taking all of the recommendation or all of the input from the listening sessions from last year and turn those into a set of recommendations that is what we've been working on in year one. Let me shift to the next page. So just wanted to give everyone a little overview of some of the values that are guiding the work of the task force. We're really focused on innovation, so welcoming innovative ideas for solutions that really lean into that whole of government approach to problem solving. So thinking how we can leverage resources that come from other parts of government to improve the early education sector. Our solutions are focused on the child-centered and focus on social emotional development of the learners. So we really want to keep the children top of mind as we're doing all of this work. And then we want the solutions to be equitable, as well as results oriented. So we're trying to prioritize work that can be implemented quickly and really make an impact while also thinking about the long-term impacts of the work we're doing as well. Great. And then back to what I hinted at on the previous slide, really wanted to touch on how we've been thinking about the work of the task force between year one and year two. So I know in year one, we were a lot more vocal about the work of the task force. We were a lot more out and about because we were really focused on learning. As you probably know, we conducted 14 listening sessions across the state, and we're really trying to get a lot of feedback from providers, parents, caregivers, everyone in the space to inform the work that we're doing. We also researched states and nations to understand unique solutions that others have done and then also work to identify resources that exist across government that could be better leveraged to support the early education and care sector. And as many of you know, that culminated in the publishing of the year one report, which has the 29 recommendations. And now that's what we've really been focused on in year two. We're thinking about how we can implement these recommendations that were published and move those forward, to really like create action around what we heard in year one. Um, and so those recommendations are focused or centered on these five main goals that I have up on the screen: um, ensuring broad access and availability, supporting high quality education and care, making sure it's affordable for all families, fostering sustainable business conditions, and then building a robust workforce ecosystem. So that's kind of how we've structured the thinking going into year two, and how we're thinking about moving all of the recommendations forward. And then to give you a little bit more background on the work that we're doing internally, Dana and I, as we mentioned, are working on a project management team, to really move these recommendations forward. We've been convening working groups, or meeting with stakeholders to discuss next steps around these recommendations, trying to pull in work that's already happening at different agencies, and then also think about what new initiatives or new work needs to be done. So it's been really exciting trying to think through how to actually make all these recommendations become a reality. And then I will just flip to the last page, or not the last page, but an additional page that shows all of the recommendations in kind of short form. This is how we've been thinking about organizing the work, because 29 recommendations is a lot to be managing. And the actual language of the recommendations is in the report if you're curious to go and see like what the actual recommendation that we're moving forward against is. But this is just here to show you there's a lot of work happening, a lot of different agencies involved in this, and our goal is to really try to make incremental progress throughout the year. Some of that looks like doing significant research. We've been doing a lot of outreach and thinking about the benefits piece. Some of that more looks like standing up teams and getting the right people organized, so that as we go into year three, we can really think about what the next steps are for those recommendations.
And Allison, I know you are in this every day, but
Yes.
the font is very small, which is good news because that means there's a lot of recommendations. And Donna has already kind of, Donna Danette has shared about the nature is there, outdoors is there, facilities is there. Can you just talk a little bit more about this? Like, what does this look like when you think about you have these recommendations and you have these agencies assigned? So I just want to appreciate kind of all of that kind of collaboration and partnership that's going on. It may seem behind the scenes because we're not hearing about it every day. So can you just talk a little bit about what does this look like in practice? So is the
So
task
can
force a
we,
meeting?
That's a
yeah.
great question, Amy. You teed us up
Yep.
perfectly.
Oh, great. Perfectly. I just know that's what
You
folks
read our
looking.
minds.
Great.
So on this slide, we wanted to just highlight three of the things we've done that we are really excited about moving these recommendations forward. So first, we hosted a small focus group last week with the Health Connector for Business folks, and are planning a series of webinars with EEC for the fall to educate early educators across the state on what is Health Connector for Business and how can it be beneficial for them. We got some really valuable feedback, and we think that this is an amazing tool that already exists that we're going to work on connecting folks with. So very excited about that in the benefits space, recognizing that the benefits conversation is incredibly complicated and we're not going to solve it this year, but it felt good to have something that we can connect people with that might help a few folks while we continue to work on sort of the bigger questions and issues.
Great.
Next, we have the teacher discounts. And so we've been working on identifying teacher discounts that are available to early educators. And Allison's been leading this work with some other folks at EEC, at EOE to identify where these discounts are and try to compile a central place for us to be able to point to. So if you're wondering where you can use your discount, you can find it in one spot. And so that's been really exciting as well. And then EOED just launched the Business Front Door, which is a centralized portal for making it easier for businesses of all sizes to get connected with the state and its resources. And EEC has been identified as a priority sector, and we have a trained navigator specific for early ed, which is really exciting.
And just to double click on the teacher discounts, that may seem like a small thing, but it is connected to such a bigger psychology of, being recognized, of kind of, the professionalism. Fun fact, I'm going to send it to you. I wrote a column when I was president of NAOIC, of the governing board, because I visited the MFA and they had discounts for teachers like starting in kindergarten. And I kind of talked to the guy at the information desk who, was like very polite to me. But, I said, why can't you extend it to people who are working with children starting at birth? So I think it's a really important kind of signal. So I really appreciate you guys calling that out.
And these are just three examples we wanted to bring your attention to, but we have weekly meetings across a variety of these recommendations. As Allison mentioned, we have working groups that we've been pulling together to try to get the right people in the room and to make progress. And as we're looking at creating a report for the second year, to summarize all our work, really focused on like what have we accomplished, what is left to accomplish, and what do we need to sort of rethink? Because we found,
Hmm.
and I'm sure you all know this really well, as you get into some of these recommendations, you ask one question and you're left with four or five more. And so trying to articulate that in a way that allows us to move forward into year three of this task force in a really productive way. And so that was
And
it for our slides.
okay, so Eugenia added in the chat also two sessions for the business front door coming next week. And I know Commissioner Kershaw is here, so I will give her a minute to maybe come on. There you are. Good morning. To say a few words. But first, Brian Gold wonders, can you talk about what the trained navigator means, where they sit? Are they focused just on new business or starting new businesses? Does it matter if it's nonprofit or for profit? And how might they interact with other government agencies?
Sure. So happy to take that one. And Brian, I can connect you with our trained navigator who's also on our project management team, which is really exciting. So Gabby Santana Goldstein is our trained navigator. She sits at EEC, and it's been really helpful to have her sort of boots on the ground in this and learning it alongside with the Business Front Door launch. So I will connect you with her because I don't know all the answers to your questions, but I'm sure she will.
And you're getting flying, clapping applause from Brian, which is a whole new Zoom situation. Commissioner, you want to add a few observations, reflections?
Sure. And I don't know if Gabby's here this morning, but I'm sure she would be happy to come back and double
Yeah.
click on any of the individual recommendations. So she could come and talk about the business front door and the work we've been doing. But it really goes to what I really wanted to say is two things. And thank you, Dana and Allison, who are leading a whole cross-divisional project management team that includes Gabby and Emily Connor-Simon from EEC and others across each of the individual secretariats who have dedicated staff to work on this. And I am overwhelmed every time I sit at the task force meetings at how everyone is showing up. Secretaries come to all the meetings of the task force, and they have assigned high-level staff and have taken this incredibly seriously. And even though I know it's been sort of an internally focused time, it's because we've been working within each of our agencies and secretariats to figure out how to deliver on the commitments that we made through this task force. And you'll see some of that today. We'll have these guys at the September board meeting. And so I'm just, I feel like we've really shown up at really high levels. And I'm grateful for my colleagues across state government. And I think they have become early childhood advocates across the sectors. And you can see our Secretary of Labor and Workforce Development knows about the workforce needs of the early education and care sector. I don't think you have that in a lot of states. I think you have our Secretary of Economic Development who recognizes that childcare is part of our infrastructure and key to recruiting and retaining employers and being competitive. And I don't think that's really common across other
Right.
states as well. So we're just getting this work started, and a lot of it has been building advocates across state government so that they can go back to their agencies and think, oh, if we're doing a digital inclusion initiative, how does that affect early childhood? If we're building new spaces or new housing, how does that affect early childhood? And that's been a lot of the work that we've been doing. And as I said, they've been showing up. And the second thing I just want to say is that this administration's strategy around childcare and early education is both investments directly in EEC and in the sector, and you see that in our budget with continued funding for C3, increases in childcare financial assistance, new funding and loan repayment, all being done in partnership with our legislature. So a lot of investment and commitment around early education, EEC, and our sector, partnered with the work of the task force, which is about how do we deploy the resources across the rest of state government. So together, that is really sort of the administration strategy to say, we're going to put early education and childcare at the top of the state's economic development, workforce, and education agendas by investing through our education system as well as across the secretariat. So task force under Dana's leadership, really pushing that sort of whole of government, while our legislature and the governor continue to partner on new investments and sustaining investments at EEC to continue to move the important work that we've been doing here in partnership with all of you. I will stop there and just turn it back to my colleagues and thank them so much, and to all of you for doing this work with us.
And we know the commissioner's coming back to the 9:30 call on August 5th,
Can't wait.
Which is also next week, which is also bananas. And then I also added that Children's Investment Fund has a survey out to better learn about how folks want to think about improving environments. So there's a survey to be filled out by August 15th. So we know facilities matter. Allison and Dana, any other reflections or what can we do as 9:30 callers to help this process along?
I think you all have been so responsive. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces on this call. We've met with a lot of you to talk about specific recommendations, and we've just really appreciated the engagement we've gotten, and also the patience. As the commissioner mentioned, we have been sort of organizing ourselves behind the scenes this year, and so it hasn't been as public as last year, but that does not mean we are not thinking about this constantly. We are working on this, and we're really excited as we start to get closer to producing the year two report to start having more events and capitalizing on all the work we've been doing behind the scenes. So I think staying engaged and as we've been having meetings, we've really appreciated everyone bringing their expertise to the table.
Thanks, Dana.
I think Dana captured it very well. It's been amazing seeing how everyone has shown up, both external to government and then within government as well. Just everyone's excited to work on this topic. Everyone recognizes that it's important, and it has been so great to show up to every meeting and have people who want to be thought partners in this work. So I think that's probably my biggest takeaway. And then the other thing I wanted to add was I just put the task force email in the chat. So if anyone has ideas or wants to talk to us about anything related to any of the recommendations, we're happy to engage and hear thoughts, and really welcome it for the purposes of progressing the recommendations. So don't be afraid to reach out.
I guess that was one of my questions. So, there are so many recommendations. It seems like so many of them are actionable too, which we always know is a rub, like coming up with a solution when there is a challenge. So if folks see an area that might not be addressed, would that be helpful information to get to you?
Yes.
Email? Okay.
Yes, don't feel, and if we've heard of something, it doesn't hurt to hear it again. We do, I think, have our finger on the pulse of a lot of things that are going on, especially with how many people are working on this behind the scenes, but it doesn't hurt to reach out and share information. And we'll let you know if we have heard of it before, but anything's helpful.
Allison, Dana, sorry, I was just wondering if they would be willing to share a little bit about what everyone can expect sort of as we move through the end of year two and look into year three of the task force.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
absolutely. Happy to talk about that. So we're starting to think about what we're going to publish in our year two report and trying to think about what have we learned this year on the recommendations and how does that translate into year three. Um, Specifically, sort of the idea of some of these recommendations have morphed as we've gotten into them. Like the initial recommendation has changed a little bit, or some of them really belong together in one work group. So I think like
Mm.
as we're starting to think about workforce and the formal workforce system, a lot of the recommendations we had defined as like sort of discrete areas really all meld together to create this continuum of workforce need. And so trying to think about how do we reflect that into next year. We've also been really focused on making sure that we are capturing all the work for this year in a way that makes it so anyone can pick it up next year and using the
Mm.
report as sort of the forcing function to get us organized to communicate out what we've done, but also what we want to do next. And so we think that that report is really going to be something that can be useful to the EEC team and the project management team moving forward as sort of what are our revised recommendations based on everything we've learned this year and also highlighting our accomplishments. So the three I mentioned earlier, and we have a couple of other things that we're working on in the pipeline to really highlight what have we done this year and where is there still work to do.
It's so interesting because we sent out an email about the early childhood agenda, which is kind of going through a parallel track, very similar, that so many great ideas. How do you group them? You know, some might not have seemed like they were connected, and then as we explored, they were connected. Um, so I really appreciate that, and thinking about, you know, that this is not over, that this is kind of part of the process. Kim Davenport added, it might be helpful to see some visual of what is in progress. I imagine there are items in a long-term bucket that are moving along in some way, other items moving now in a bigger way. And Brian
Yeah,
said, agreed. With large and complex recommendations, it's always helpful to see what progress looks like, even if it's not tangible milestones.
we are thinking about that a lot. I think in particular, Allison and I have spent a lot of time, and Nancy, our other colleague on this call, has spent a lot of time thinking about benefits.
Nancy
So
McGee. Whoa, Nancy, hello.
so she's been with us for the summer as a Rappaport fellow and has done a ton of research in the benefits space. And it's been so incredible to have her on our team and really thinking about benefits. And there's so many facets to it. And so how do we report out everything we've learned to show the progress we've made, recognizing this isn't one you can solve. And then also there's just some other, so someone mentioned nature and outdoors earlier. That's one where we really have some exciting things in the pipeline that we're just about ready to move on, which is exciting and something that I think will be really nice to say, sort of like, look at what we did. And then also in benefits, it's more of a like, we learned a lot, look at what we're doing next. And so there's going to be a different way we're showing all of the progress.
Well, Nancy, I'd love to give you a minute to say hello and introduce yourself. And while we're doing that 9:30 callers, as we know with our partners in government, sometimes it can feel tough. So would love to have some 9:30 call love and appreciation in the chat that we can share with Dana and Allison. But Nancy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I am Nancy Yee. I'm a student at Harvard Graduate School of Education, currently a Rappaport Fellow through Hugsy, working on benefits for retirement and healthcare. So a lot of the work that Dana and Allison was already saying, we've been working really strategically to kind of make these recommendations for year three. So I'm just in the process of documenting everything, and creating amazing visuals for people like Kim and Brian who really want to see what this looks like in action.
And tell us how you got to be in your where you are now. What else do you do, Nancy?
Oh, well, I'm a full-time early childhood teacher. I'm currently also on the board for the Massachusetts Association for the Education of Young Children, as well as on the Affiliate Advisory Council for the National Association for the Education of Young Children. So I've been doing this work for a really long time. I've lobbied with Amy, and I've met with many of you on the call as well. So just a fierce advocate for early childhood.
Thank you. Um, Allison and Dana, we can't thank you enough. We so appreciate all the work that's happening behind of and in front of the scenes. Just a quick follow-up for 9:30 callers. We had a letter thanking the governor and the legislature for the investments in the fiscal year 26 budget. So we sent that yesterday to the governor, lieutenant governor's team, and the legislature, and have already heard back. I think it can sometimes feel like in government you're doing all these things and no one's paying attention. So we wanted to make sure that we acknowledge that in these tough fiscal times, you know, to still have $475 million in the C3 line item is incredible. So continue to add the love and appreciation in the 9:30 call in the chat. And please, Dana and Allison, anytime you want to come back, share updates, get feedback, whatever you need, we are here for you. And just want to, and we put the links into the report that was in the chat as well. And the website, if you go to the kind of landing page for the Interagency Task Force, you will find all of the materials. And we will plan to have Gabby on as well, Commissioner. That's a great idea. All right. Well, it is Thursday, so we will be back on the 9:30 call next week. Let me see if I can open the schedule. Right. So Monday, we are going to hear from our strategies for children interns. You've had 3 interns this summer. As we said, Tuesday we'll have the commissioner on, and Excel Linguistics will be here to translate. We'll have sharing the microphone on Wednesday, and then Brendan Fogarty will be back on Thursday for a longer kind of update and presentation on the B3 opportunity he announced yesterday on sharing the mic. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday morning. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much. Oh, Alice.